Hello. Here we are this morning, talking to you about pieces of art and entertainment and how quick we are to judge those things in today's day and age and today's society. I feel like it's ironic because we pride ourselves in being a group that is largely judgment-free, and that we don't frequently pass judgment upon things, especially for reasons we don't see that make any sense. And so it's interesting that we, from a societal standpoint, don't pass near as much judgment as we used to, but from a what's the word I'm looking for? From a standpoint of like the arts and the things that people do, we do pass an extreme amount of judgment upon those things. And it's all understandable because art and entertainment are optional things in this life. They are not things, they are and they aren't. When it comes down to it, you obviously need food, water, shelter, the whole bit, before you need to start thinking about entertainment and art and those sorts of things. But life without any sort of entertainment is not a life worth living, and I feel like that would lead to some major mental health issues there. Now, not everybody chooses their entertainment the same. Not everybody participates in art in that way. Not everybody participates in entertainment in that way. But for those of us who find that as our go-to thing, our escape from reality, if you will, we seem to be extremely critical of the things that we spend our time doing. And once again, our time is valuable. It's all we have. And our money is valuable. It's what we spend our time obtaining. And so when you purchase something, you want it to be worth the price. You want it to be worth what you spent it on, or what you spent on it. And for that, it's very interesting to me when people are examining these things and finding their worth, or finding them lacking, or whatever they're finding. And it's interesting to me to measure it in hours, because most of us get paid by the hour, and so you can say that your time is worth X amount of dollars per hour. And so when you consider that, you can figure up okay, if my time is worth X amount of dollars per hour, and I have played this for X amount of hours, and I paid X amount of dollars for it, then I've gotten my money's worth out of it. And that's a really simple equation that I have found helps me justify the cost of a lot of things. And obviously I don't think there's anybody in the world who's being only paid $1 an hour, but maybe there is. But for the sake of easy money, or for the sake of easy math, we're gonna pretend like we earn $1 an hour. And then we buy a $60 video game. That means you would have to spend 60 hours on that game to pay back the amount spent, if that makes sense. So it takes you 60 hours in life to acquire $60 to be able to buy a $60 game, and then so that game then should provide you at least 60 hours of entertainment in return. That's how I calculate the worth of items for me, is I take my hourly rate and I say, okay, I make X amount of dollars an hour, and so it would take me 2 hours to earn enough money to buy this game. So if it provides me with 2 hours of entertainment, then we're good. Obviously, the $1 an hour example is a pretty bad example because I don't know very many games that you're going to get, especially nowadays, that you're going to get 60 hours out of. That's pretty intense. But I also don't know because I don't spend a whole lot of time on games anymore. And I feel like on my Xbox, the ones that I have the largest playtime in are about at 30 days worth of play, which is significantly more than 60 hours, of course. But it's also like these games have been out for several years. And like there's that to say as well. Like if it takes me 2 years to get my 60 hours out of this game, was it worth? Because I didn't pay myself back until 2 years' time. Versus another game where you might get your time back right there immediately. It's definitely a difficult. Where am I getting at here? It's definitely a difficult thing to balance and to judge. But that's how I personally judge the worth of my entertainment. But I feel like we're so quick to judge and quick to be critical of the item or of the things that we purchase, and we have every right to be that way, but I feel like it's gotten to the extreme now where like what I'm really experiencing right now is like we have these more or less indie games coming out. Like Killer Clowns from Outer Space is the game that I'm really interested in right now, and it's not like this AAA title that has all this financial backing behind it to be like this great game. But when it doesn't succeed like these great games, people judge it and get all upset about it and say that it wasn't worth the money. But it's like part of supporting a smaller creator is understanding that you're gonna have smaller creator woes. Like no game is perfect, but I'd much rather play Killer Clowns from Outer Space than most any AAA title that's out there today. And that is the reality that I realize and that I accept. And so with that, I now understand that, like, yeah, there's going to be some weird things. Like, these people, this is like the first game they've ever made or whatever. But it's not really the first game they've ever made. But it's just a balancing act of knowing what to accept and knowing what to be upset with. I know a lot of people who are just upset with the game and they hate it. And they're just like, oh, it's garbage. It should have been perfect. And it's like, AAA games aren't even perfect when they get released. These games with multi-million-dollar budgets are not perfect on launch. And so, no, it's not going to be perfect it's not going to be fair to expect an independently published game to be perfect either. But, yeah, it's just interesting to look at that. And, like, I'd like to, because everybody's like, it's not worth the money, it's not worth the money, it's not worth the money. I like to understand what other people's formulas are for finding out if something is worth the money. Like, what is your calculations for something being worth the spend? And how do you justify that to yourself? Because, like I said, it took me a while to come up with, like, I was like, how am I going to justify something? And it's really interesting because, like, it gets really interesting when you dissect it under, like, different pieces of art. Because, like, music, for example, I may not listen to an entire CD. Like, if CD was $15, and we're going to go back to me earning $1 an hour, that means I would have to listen to it 15 hours to actually get my money's worth out of it. But, like, more often than not, most people don't listen to an entire CD. They listen to the select songs that they like. And so at that point, it's like, okay, well, if I listen to this 3-minute song, how many times do I have to listen to a 3-minute song to get an hour out of it? And then how many times do I have to, how many hours then? So 15 hours times however many times I gotta listen to the song. You gotta listen to this song a lot. But, like, with music and stuff, that pretty much lasts your entire lifetime. Like, you can buy a CD or a vinyl or a cassette in the 80s and still be listening to it like today. And I feel like it's safe to say that you've gotten your money's worth out of that cassette if you're still listening to it 40 years later. Like, there's no way to say that that's not that wasn't worth it. And like I feel like the same can be said like with games and movies and stuff, but like I think of Left 4 Dead pretty commonly because that was a big deal for me when it came out. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and it certainly was at the time. It was a big deal for me, and I can remember I had to return a bunch of games and stuff to be able to get it, and like I got it down to like a $20 purchase price, and my parents fronted me the difference, and it was an incredible experience. It was incredibly fun. It was a really good time, and like I still to this day dump hours in on that game, and I wish that I feel like the game had an in-game like timekeeper where it would tell you how long you'd played the game, but I feel like when I transposed it over from Xbox 360 to Xbox One, that time was lost, so I know it's not accurate if it's there. I know certain games back then had them, certain games don't. Now almost every game does, but so I was but I know I've gotten my money's worth out of that game. It came out in 2009, so it turned 10 in 2019, and so it's turning 15 this year. That'll be 15 years old this year, and like I am still playing it, and that's wild to think that game is 15 years old because I was I a freshman in high school when that game came out? Like my freshman year of high school was 15 years ago. Yikes around here. Anyway, but yeah, it is very interesting to look at those things and to measure them and be like, did I get my money's worth out of this? Did I get my money's worth out of this? And it really does make, or at least for me, it makes me feel better about the things that I buy, because I'm like, shoot, yeah, like I've played this game so many times. I've listened to this album or song so many times. I've done X, Y, and Z so many times. It was well worth the money. And like some of those things don't even need like the justification. Like I bought a Jim Croce album for like $1 because this guy didn't know what he had and was selling it super cheap. But then again, I don't know that albums, especially used albums, need to be worth all that much. Like I would never buy one for $35. That's insane. But I haven't owned it for very long. I've only owned it for like 2 or 3 years, but there's so much good stuff on that album that I was like, I don't even care that I haven't paid myself back in time yet, but I do care about the fact that the content is just so magical, and that is hugely important to me. And so hopefully we can get somewhere where we can all kind of better understand like art and appreciate it a little bit with a little bit more favorability to it, if that's even a word. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. It's interesting to look at. I certainly hope for the best there, and I just wish people would be a little more forgiving. And maybe that's just the difference between me and the rest of the consumer world, because like I have largely stepped out of like consumerism. Like I still consume. I'm not immune to consumption, but I consume far less than most people do, and I look at consumption and those sorts of things from a different lens, and that lens being that like I too am a creator, and like I wish that someone would give me the same lenience that I'm giving them as a consumer. And that's one thing that like having a creator's market has done for consumption, is there's more people out in the world now creating stuff and trying to make it in this world, so that people who are consuming those goods can understand. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'm kind of there too. Like I'm trying to do my thing and struggling with it. So I can appreciate that your thing, albeit not perfect, is still very awesome. And so, yeah, I just hope that everything goes well there, and hopefully the world can calm down and be less hypercritical, but maybe it won't. Maybe that's just, and I'm sure it is just some people's nature, but it's like I have this particular person that I was like really excited to play games with, and now I'm like dreading it because they're just like super critical, and if things aren't going their way, they just get all butthurt and leave the game, and it's just like, guys, seriously, are we gonna do like this, like acting like a child? But I don't want to get on that rant right now. At any rate, but yeah, hopefully things turn around. Like, the game is young yet. It's been out for not even a week. It's been out for 2 weeks, and people are already losing their minds over it. I'm like, guys, like, I've had a heck of a time with it. It's been a fun time. Couldn't tell you how many hours I've spent on it yet. I haven't looked, and I haven't cared to look. Like, I had fun. I'm satisfied with the amount of money I spent on it. And that's the other thing, is like, my system values my time based upon how my employer values my time. And that's not always a fair estimate of your time. Like, just because your employer is willing to pay you $1 for your time doesn't mean that you're only worth $1 or that you're even worth $1. If you're a real lame pain in the butt, maybe you're only worth 50 cents. But I like to lean towards the idea that most people are probably worth more than what they're getting paid, but it's the only affirmative dollar amount that I have to go on. Like, I can live in this fantasy world and pretend like my time is worth $1 million an hour, but if no one's willing to pay it, then it can't possibly be worth that. And that's what we all kind of have to face, is like, and that's like with selling anything, like, it's only worth what people are willing to pay for it. And if no one's willing to pay, then it's obviously not that worth that much. But yeah, it is an interesting thing to discuss, how to value the things that we buy. We live in a very things-centric world, so for me it's helpful to be able to have my own system by which I value it. And hopefully you found value in my value, and if you didn't, then thanks for stopping by anyway.